Well, hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is the first time I've recorded, I think, in 2021, so Happy New Year if I haven't said that to you already before. So it's wonder what this year has got in store for us as people and as a world and as nations and as photographers, as YouTubers, who knows. However, we will face it together. So today I'm wanting to talk about one of the most prolific and well-known photographers in Australia, and this man has been going for more than 50 years now and has had a huge impact on photography in Australia and around the world. He's probably the most well-known photographer in Australia, for that matter. There are lots of famous photographers in Australia, but mostly only us photographers know who they are. But this man's name is well known to anyone who's a photographer or not, because he has been prolific in his output, both in books about wildlife and nature and undersea, but also lots of educational children's books and about wildlife and about photography. And a few years back now, in fact, I'm looking at my computer here, and it was on the 16th of October 2011, he did an all-day seminar at the Marion shopping centre, I suppose, in Adelaide, not far from where I live. They have a theaterette there, and or the Marion Council, and it was packed. It was an all-day seminar. It was free. It was packed with people. That shows you the popularity he had. And then on the following night, on the Monday, we had another session that night, and that was packed out as well. So for free, got probably 1.5 days of Steve Parish showing us his work, talking about his work, talking about how he went about it, and it was just a wonderful time. And he was answering questions from the audience and interacting with the audience. And Steve is a really large and live character if you've ever seen him in the flesh. One of the reasons he was probably doing this was because recently, just before that time, excuse me, that'll teach me to talk so much. So, one of the reasons he was doing that, I think, was because his publishing house, Steve Parish Publishing, had had a huge hit by the floods up in Brisbane, up in Queensland, just not long before that event when I went to hear him speak. And heaps of his records and his photos and just so much of his work, which was stockpiled in a warehouse, got flooded out and destroyed, and almost destroyed him financially and as a business person. But he's still going, and he's still kicked on from there. But anyway, he had lots of books on sale on that particular day, probably to try and help recoup some of his losses. And he was doing a signing for books if you bought them afterwards. I was fortunate to buy about 4 books of his, and all of them autographed. The really terrific one is this one here, 50 Years of Photographing Australia by Steve Parish, and it is an amazing book. He has other ones that he's done as well, but this was a really wonderful book. I'll just open up to show you some of the work inside of here. Look at that. These are some possums photographed in the rainforest up in Queensland, I think, somewhere. And it's just full of amazing work. That's something that doesn't belong in there. She's a nice big coffee table book. A huge flock of budgerigars and a bit about the budgerigars. On the cover, that's the eye of, I think, a water dragon or a reptile of some sort anyway. And he has such an eye for detail, and he shared all the things he did. One of the things that I found interesting on that day was that he said, I use the P button on my camera quite often, which is P for program. He uses his technology, and he was doing digital technology. The first part of his career was all analog, like many of us were. He's 1 year older than I am, actually. And so he was using some digital technology as well then, and he had all these wonderful keynote or PowerPoint displays that he was putting up on the screen for us. But he said he was using P for he said it doesn't stand for program, it stands for professional. So his philosophy was, anyway I'm going to get the best photo I want quickly, I'm going to use the technology, and that's what he did. And he also had an interesting, he shared some of his marketing stuff that he was doing. He actually went through all of Australia, all the postcodes, and picked out all the postcodes in the main regional tourist type areas and ticked them off one by one as he visited those places and photographed them, so he would be able to produce material. And he used to also use Google Earth, and he probably still does, to search out locations like many photographers do, and then work out the best spots before he got there to go and visit and photograph them. So an amazing person. He's also collaborated on lots of books with other people within Australia as well. I have one here, which is a really nice book called Wild Habitats, and he's collaborated on that, A Natural History of Australian Ecosystems, and it's by Alan Fox and Steve Parish. And so on many other books he has been the photographer supplying the work, and other people supplying the text and the expertise. In fact, some of his children's books on wildlife and nature, he's got some wonderful writers who've backed him up in those books where he's supplied the photographs, and they've done the text work. Looking at his website today, he appears to have a philosophy of using photography as therapy or for well-being, and I'm going to put a link below this post to his website, and you'll be able to read about some of the things he's doing these days. I also firmly believe in photography as therapy, and he's had his battles personally over the years. He shared a lot of that with us back then 10 years ago when I went to those seminars, and he's probably had some tough times since, but he's an amazingly versatile and resilient man. But he does, from what I can read, he does a lot to try and help people with mental health issues, and do that through the aid of photography. So there'll be a link below to his website, and you can read all about it and see all his wonderful work that he does. So that's just a brief introduction to Steve Parish, a wonderful Australian photographer. And over this year I hope to introduce you to a few other of my favourite Australian photographers. Some of them are really fantastic, and some international ones too. People like Michael Morecombe, and there's a man from overseas called Thomas Morent. He's got a beautiful book that was the first one he brought out on rainforests. And so I'll be sharing some of those people with you, and lots more than those during this year. So thanks for watching again. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and it's good to see that number of subscribers is ticking up a little bit, which is quite surprises me really. So thanks again for watching. Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time. Now my little button's not working properly, so I'm going to have to do this on